Spiritual Christianity, collected from the theological works of Emanuel Swedenborg by Charles Augustus Tulk. Chapter 1 on the Divine Essay, or the Lord Jehovah, such as he is in himself. Quote from True Christian Religion, number 18. It is my intention first to treat of the divine essay and afterwards of the divine essence. It might seem at first sight as if these two terms, essay and essence, had one and the same meaning, but this is not so. Essay, or being, is in its signification more universal than essence, for an essence supposes that there is an essay, and it is an essence by derivation from an essay. The essay of God, or the divine essay, does not admit of any description, because it surpasses every idea of human thought, within the range of which nothing else can fall but that which is created and finite. The uncreated and the infinite cannot, and therefore neither can the divine essay. The divine essay is being itself, who is himself the source of all things, and who must be known in all things, that they may be. True Christian Religion, number 19. It is well known that the word Jehovah signifies I am and the being, or essay, and it appears from the book of Genesis, or creation, that this was the name of God from the most ancient times. In the first chapter he is called God, but in the second and following chapters, Jehovah God. In after times, when the posterity of Abraham by descent through Jacob had forgotten the name of God in consequence of their long sojourning in Egypt, it was thus brought back to their remembrance. When Moses inquired of God his name, God said, I am who I am. Thus shalt they say unto the children of Israel, I am has sent me unto you. Thus shalt they say unto the children of Israel, Jehovah the God of your fathers has sent me to you. This is my name for ever, and this is my memorial unto all generations. As God alone is the I am and the essay, or Jehovah, and therefore there is not any one thing in the created universe which derives not its being from him. And from True Christian Religion, number 21. Jehovah God is essay in itself, or underived being, because he is the I am, the self-same and the one only being, and the first from eternity to eternity, from whom everything is which is in being, and without him it could not be anything. In this, and in no other sense, is he the beginning and the ending, the first and the last, the Alpha and the Omega. It cannot properly be said that his own essay or being was from himself, for the very expression from himself supposes priority, and therefore time, which is not predicable of the infinite, who is said to be from eternity. But besides this, such an expression supposes another God, who is God in himself or underived. Thus it supposes a God from a God, or else that God formed himself, and then he could neither be uncreated or infinite, for by doing so he must have limited himself either from himself or derivatively from another. And from Arcana Celestia 5321. That which proceeds directly or without a medium from the divine essay, not even the angels of the inmost heaven can comprehend. And the reason is that it is infinite, and being infinite, it surpasses all comprehension, even though the comprehension be angelic. From Arcana Celestia 926. Of Jehovah, strictly speaking, nothing else can be said but that he is. The properties which are throughout the word ascribed to Jehovah are adapted to the capacities of such persons as can comprehend nothing which is not drawn from the condition of man in nature, and this will account for the form in which the literal sense of the word is written. In order that the simple in heart may be instructed, it must be by those appearances of truth which are incidental to man's condition in nature. For man scarcely ever advances beyond the various kinds of knowledge which they derive from the objects of their senses, and therefore the word is so written as to suit their capacities. And from Arcana Celestia 2553. All the thoughts of man are bounded by the natural objects which belong to his sensuous faculties. And whatever proposition is not drawn from them, and is not expressed so as to agree with them, is not comprehended, but is lost, as a sight would be without a boundary, in a kind of ocean or universe. For this reason, if doctrinal truths were expounded in any other way to man, he would not receive one of them, and from not receiving them, he would hold them in no respect. This is abundantly proved from every part of the word in which purely divine truths are, for the above-mentioned reason, expounded naturally and even sensuously, as where it is said of Jehovah that he has ears, eyes, and a countenance, and affections like man, as well as from those parts where anger is attributed to him, and many things beside. And from Arcana Celestia 3869. It is admitted that Jehovah has neither ears, as man has, nor eyes, but that such an attribute as can be predicated of the divine essence is signified by these organs, as the infinite will and the infinite intelligence. Providence is the infinite will, and foresight the infinite intelligence. These attributes are understood in their supreme sense by the ear and the eye when they are, in the literal sense, ascribed to Jehovah. From True Christian Religion, number 25. The divine essay, or God, such as he is in himself, is immutably the same. Not that God is simply sameness, but infinite. That is, he is the same from eternity to eternity. He is the same everywhere, the same with everyone, and the same in everyone. All variation and mutability being in the recipient, for they are effects produced by the state of the recipient. From Divine Love and Wisdom, number 124. The Lord has not in himself a greater or lesser degree of love and wisdom. In other words, he, as a Son of Heaven, does not vary in the degree of his warmth and light with different angels, for he is everywhere the same, but he is not received by one in the same degree as he is by another. On the divine infinity and eternity, substance and form. From Apocalypse Explained 1220. To think of the divine properties from the properties of nature, which are matter, space, and time, is the origin of all naturalism. When the mind clings to these natural properties and at the same time is not willing to believe what it does not understand, the inevitable consequence must be that it will blind its intellect, and from the darkness in which it will be involved, deny that there is a divine providence. From this, it will proceed to deny the omnipotence of God, his omnipresence, and his omniscience, which properties, although they are exactly what religion teaches them to be, as well within nature as above it, cannot be intellectually comprehended unless spaces and times be removed from the ideas of the thought, for these are in some sort involved in every natural idea. Unless spaces and times be excluded from the thought, the result must be that nature will be considered as everything, as self-produced and the very source of life, and consequently in its inmost form to be that which is called God, while everything besides nature will be held to be purely ideal. I know there are some who will wonder at the assertion that there can be an existence without space or time, that the divine being is devoid of both, and that spiritual beings are not actually in them, but only in their appearances, and notwithstanding this, that spiritual divine substances, though in themselves devoid of space and time, are the very essence of all things, which ever have been existent, and which do now exist, while without them, natural forms would be like bodies without souls, which are nothing more than lifeless carcasses. From Divine Love and Wisdom, number 69. Nature has two properties, and these are space and time. From these, while a man is remaining in this world, he forms the idea of his thought, and from those ideas, his intellect. But in case he rests in those ideas and raise not his mind above them, not a single spiritual, not a single divine truth will he be able to perceive, for he will assuredly involve them in the ideas which he derives from space and time. In proportion as he does this, the obscure light of his intellect becomes merely a natural light, and to think from such a light, when reasoning upon spiritual and divine subjects, is as if a man were to draw conclusions concerning those objects which appear only by the light of day from the thick darkness of night. This is the origin of naturalism. But he who knows how to raise his mind above those ideas of his thought, which are derived from space and time, will pass from thick mental darkness into light, and taste of spiritual and divine truths, until at last he will see the particulars which they embrace, as well as the truths which flow from them. From that clear light he will be able to disperse the thick darkness of his natural light, and to remove its fallacies from the centre of his perception to the sides. Every man who has an intellect can think, and actually does think, above those properties of nature, and when he so thinks he will affirm and see that the divine essence, to be omnipresent, cannot be in space. But if a man deny the divine omnipresence and ascribe all things to nature, he will not be able to raise his thoughts above space, although he still has the power. From Arcana Celestia 3404. To understand what is meant by the appearances of truth, the following may be taken as an example. It is known that the divine essence is infinite in respect to esse, and in respect to existere, eternal, and that the finite is not capable of comprehending the infinite, nor even the eternal, for the eternal is the infinite in respect to existere. As the divine esse is infinite and eternal, all properties which are from the divine essence are infinite and eternal also. And being infinite, they are equally incomprehensible to angels, for they too are finite. On this account, the infinite and eternal properties are presented before them under certain appearances which are finite, and yet in such forms as to be very far above the sphere of man's comprehension. For instance, man has no other idea of eternity but what he derives from time, and therefore he is unable to comprehend the meaning of the expression from eternity, nor consequently what the divine essence could be before time or before the world was created. So long as there is the least idea of time lurking in his thought, it will be impossible for him, if he thinks upon this subject, to avoid falling into errors from which he cannot be extricated. Now the angels, having no idea of time, but of a state of mind instead, enjoy the best possible perception of this subject, for with them eternity is not an eternity of time, but of mental state, devoid of the idea of time. This example will serve to show what the appearances are which are presented to the angels compared with those of man, and how superior they are. For man has not a single thought, no, not even the least, which is not biased in its direction by time and space. But on the other hand, angels derive not anything from time and space, but from the state of mind as to the esse and existere instead. From Arcana Celestia 8325. A natural man will inevitably fall into a fantasy when he thinks from time of the divine essence, as for instance, what he did before the creation of the world, that is, what he had been doing from eternity until the creation. nor can he be extricated from this difficulty until the ideas of time and space are removed from his mind. The angels, when they think of this eternity, never think of it from time, but from state. And from Apocalypse Explained 1130. God, because he is uncreated, is also eternal. For the life itself that is God is life in itself, or underived life, and is not either from itself nor from nothing. Thus it is devoid of origin, and that which is devoid of origin is from eternity and eternal. A natural man, being altogether incapable of conceiving of a being that he is without origin, can have no idea of God from eternity. But this is not the case with a spiritual man. The thought of a natural man cannot be divested of the idea of time, nor abstracted from it, for it is inherent in him from that very nature in which he lives, and thus neither can he be abstracted from, nor divested of, the idea of an origin, because an origin is to him a beginning in time. The appearance of the sun's progression has impressed this idea upon him. But the thought of a spiritual man is abstracted from the idea of time, because it is elevated above nature, and instead of it, he has the idea of a state of life, and instead of the duration of time, a state of thought springing from affection, which constitutes life. And from the Divine Love and Wisdom, number 75. Times, which are properties of nature in its world, are pure states of mind in the spiritual world, which states appear progressive, because angels and spirits are finite. It follows, therefore, that in God they are not progressive, because he is infinite, and the infinities in him are one. And from this it follows also that the divine essence in all time is himself devoid of time. From Divine Love and Wisdom, number 76. He who knows not how to think, and who is therefore unable by any kind of perception to think of God without time, cannot conceive otherwise of eternity than as being an eternity of time. The consequence of this will be that when he thinks of God from eternity, he will be positively insane, for he will think from a beginning, and a beginning is only applicable to time. So great will be his infatuation that he will actually believe God to have derived his existence from himself, and from this he will fall headlong into the origin of nature from itself, from which it will be impossible to extricate him. But by a spiritual or angelic idea of eternity, which is devoid of time, and when it is seen to be devoid of time, then is eternity identical with the divine essence, and this is divine in itself and not from itself. The angels say they can indeed have a perception of God from eternity, but by no means can they have any perception of nature from eternity, and still less of nature being self-derived, and that it is utterly impossible for them to think of nature as being underived, for that which is underived is esse, or being itself, from whom are all things, and underived esse or being is life itself, and this life is the divine love of the divine wisdom, and the divine wisdom of the divine love. This, in the perception of angels, is eternity, and thus it is abstracted from time, just as the uncreated is from the created, or as the infinite is from the finite, between which there is not the least ratio, that is, they are unalike in kind.